The Rhode Island Natural History Survey presents videos to showcase the animals, plants, geology, and natural systems that surround us, and the people and organizations working to understand and conserve them.
In this video, we're learning about leaf miners. They're insects that feed in between the top and bottom layer of leaves. Most leaf miners are the larvae, the immature stage of either flies, moths, or beetles. We're going to be following around entomologist Charley Eiseman and his partner collaborator Julia Blythe, who've come to the High Rock and Scott Brook preserves in Cumberland in their search for rare or unusual leaf miners. And a special thanks, of course, to our hosts at the site, the Cumberland Land Trust. They've done a great job to preserve this very special area from development. So why this site? Well, often leaf miners are particular to one species of plant. Leaf miners that specialize in common plants are common. So if you want to find rare leaf miners, you need rare plants. And the greenstone bedrock at the Cumberland site is so unusual, it supports plants that are rare or absent everywhere else in the state. Before we get started, Charley's Leaf Miner Survey in Rhode Island is funded by a grant from the Godzala Research Fund of the Rhode Island Natural History Survey. So thanks to the survey friend who created that fund and made this possible. Also, if you like this video about leaf miners, you're going to love Charley's blog, and I've put a link to it down below. Or one of Charley's books, Tracks and Signs of Insects and Other Invertebrates, which was published by Stackpole in 2010. Or if you're really serious, his nearly 2,000-page magnum opus, Leaf Miners of North America, which he self-published last year in electronic form. And again, there's a link to it down below. So how does one go about finding leaf miners? That's the most amazing thing. I knew leaves are often eaten by insects, but I always thought the spots, holes, crumples, and rips you see on leaves were just wear and tear. I guess I never really thought about who is the agent of that wear and tear. In fact, quite a lot of those marks are the telltale signs of leaf mining insects. Around me all the time has been this array of interesting creatures, and I never knew anything about them. One thing you'll notice in this video is Charley taking samples of leaves with the miners in them. Charley can often narrow in on a species based just on the look of the mine, and in fact that's one of the goals of his book, to match mines to species of insect and species of insect to their species of host plant. But usually it's really hard to identify an insect based just on an immature stage, so Charley's developed a process for rearing samples at home until the adult emerges and then IDing the species. So let's follow Charley and Julia through their exploration of Scott Brook in Cumberland and see what being a leaf miner finder is all about.
The larva starts out making a mine on the lower leaf surface, and then it spins silk inside to as the silk dries, it contracts and makes the leaf buckle, so it forms this tent around the larva. It gives it more room to move around in.
So what are the characteristics that make it?
Entirely linear mine with a continuous central line of frass down the middle. If you see that on a birch, it's a stigmella. And you see that on most things, it's probably a stigmella.
Not just any moth, but this stigmella
Right.
in particular.
But a central frass line more generally tells you it's not a fly, because flies lie on their sides and poop on one side of the mine, and then they roll over and poop on the other side. But if you see a central line, it's probably a moth. It might be a beetle.
And how do beetles poop?
Beetles, moths, and sawflies are all either on their bellies or on their backs, so they're pooping in a central line. And the larva at the end switches to the lower surface and hides its puparium there. So for any parasitoids or predators who are visually hunting from above, it'll look like an empty mine. This one, it gets more blotchy. That's Nemoromyza posticata, which is on a wide variety of plants in the aster family. And the larva drops to the ground to pupate. This particular larva is still in there. This is a Camararia larva, so they're moths in the largest family of leaf mining moths, the Gracilariidae, and there are, I think, 3 different species on hop hornbeam, and it may be possible to tell them apart just by the larva, but that needs to be better established. I basically need to rear them to adults to be sure which species I have.
So you're going to collect some of those?
Yeah, we're sticking them in vials, and probably next spring we'll have to wait before the adults emerge.
How do you know whether, I've had this question for a while, how do you know whether to put a vial in the refrigerator versus just in some regular place?
And anything that, I wait until November or so, and then anything that hasn't emerged by then, I figure it needs...
So you don't just take it home and stick it in a refrigerator?
No.
Got it.
Yeah, most things get left on a shelf in a shady place, and then checked daily to see if anything comes out. And then if that doesn't happen by fall, then they go into the refrigerator to experience winter.
A lot harder to find the mines that don't have that little hole front to it. Kind of turns into a blotch here. This is an entirely linear mine made by a nepticulid, Stigmella juglandifoliella, and we looked at a Stigmella and birch already, so same genus. Really tiny moth that everything in the family Heliozelidae, when the larva is finished mining the leaf, they cut out this little oval leaf piece, and that becomes their cocoon, which they attach to some other object. So that little oval cutout there is where the larva cut out its cocoon. So they drop down on a strand of silk until they hit the ground, and then they walk off carrying this leaf piece like a turtle.
So that's the mine to the left of it, and then they ended it and punched out a piece.
Yeah. So this is a relative of the emerald ash borer, the family Buprestidae, but some of them are leaf miners. This one is on tick trefoil, Desmodium. The beetle is Pachycellus levigatus. The larva will eventually spin a circular cocoon inside the mine and overwinter in that, and then in the spring it cuts out this neat circular lid and the beetle crawls out, the little shiny black beetle. And then moves to the upper surface, makes an entirely upper surface mine, but it keeps returning to this central point to push its frass out of the underside of the mine, so it has this very clean mine that is looking a little brownish now because it's getting old and discolored, but they're pure whitish when they're fresh. And these other ones, maybe these are all the same thing, but there is also a buprestid beetle that mines in Desmodium leaves. Very nice. I wonder if I can figure out which species of Desmodium this is. It looks kind of like a snail, the pattern that snails make when they're feeding on algae, just with these kind of S-curved little
the back and
markings.
forth, right.
And that's on
Whitewood aster.
Whitewood
Yeah,
aster.
and that can help you distinguish whitewood aster from heart-leaved aster, because you'll never see those mines on heart-leaved aster.
Cool.
Or agromyzid flies that makes identical mines on deer-tongue grass and other dicantheliums. You have to rear them and look at the male genitalia to figure out which one you have.
So how do miners in grasses differ? Because the veins and everything are different. Do they?
Well, on narrow-leaved grasses, they all tend to look kind of similar, they're just filling the width of it, but there'll be different frass patterns, and they might be more confined to the upper leaf surface or more full depth. And
Are there blotch miners on grass?
Yeah, this would be considered a blotch miner.
So they can open up enough of it between the veins to make a little balloon.
And then there are different egg laying and pupation habits, so it often takes a little more work to separate the grass miners, but can be done. Okay, so we've got a hop hornbeam leaf here with a great illustration of niche partitioning. There's a Camararia mine on the upper surface, this big brownish blotch, and on the underside, this smaller wrinkly area is a Phyllonerichter mine. So the Camararia is just in the upper mesophyll, the palisade cells, and the Phyllonerichter is in the spongy mesophyll. Eventually it'll make a deeper mine that'll be picking away at the palisade mesophyll.
And is that a fly?
They're both moths.
They're both moths, okay.
And closely related, two genera in the same moth family, but Camararia larvae exclusively feed on the upper surface, and Phyllonerichters are almost all on the lower surface.
Natural History Survey videos are made possible through the generous contributions of members and friends. Want to help us do more environmental science and conservation? Hit the like button, share our videos with your circle, subscribe, or make a financial contribution on our website, ranhs.org, or through Patreon. Thanks, and see you out there.